Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome to another episode of China Update, where we discuss leading political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Now, before we jump in, a quick announcement to make. Today is this channel, China Update's 6-year anniversary. 6 years ago today, I began this channel with hope to, in whatever modest way I could, contribute to a better understanding of China and to better conversations about this complex and consequential country. The goal was that perhaps I could get to 1,000 subscribers and a few hundred views per video. Now, 6 years later, it is incredible to see how big the channel has grown. I had no idea that there was such passion in a community interested in this space. It has been an incredible pleasure over these last 6 years to be presenting these episodes to you all every day. I am deeply proud and inspired by the community we have here, and I hope that that goal to modestly contribute to better conversations about China, to have a better, more grounded understanding of this country has in some way been fulfilled. And I hope to continue to do this channel for you all as a one-man band, just as an independent creator without any corporate backing or corporate infrastructure behind me into the future for at least another 6 years and hopefully beyond that. Thank you so much, everybody, for the incredible ongoing support over all this time. For those who have been with the channel for a long time and those who are new to the channel, I deeply appreciate your support. I appreciate you being part of this community, and it's a privilege and an honor to produce these every day for you all. Thank you so much. Now, with that said, let's jump in. Of course, all the world's focus is on the escalating US-China trade conflict, which is fast expanding into new sectors. We continue our daily coverage of this space. Signs of de-escalation remain absent in the intensifying US-China economic confrontation. On Tuesday, Beijing moved to sanction 5 US-related subsidiaries of South Korea's Hanwha Ocean, marking a new front in the spiraling standoff over trade, shipping, and industrial control. At the same time, reciprocal port fees and expanding export controls signaled that both sides are hardening positions ahead of a possible Trump-Xi meeting, the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation APEC summit in South Korea later this month. Yesterday, China's Ministry of Commerce announced sanctions on 5 Hanwha subsidiaries in the United States, accusing them of assisting the U.S. Trade Representative's Section 301 investigation into China's maritime, logistics, and shipbuilding sectors. Beijing said the companies had, quote, endangered China's sovereignty, security, and development interests, end quote, and warned that further measures could follow. The move directly responds to Washington's Section 301 probe, which is examining whether China unfairly subsidizes its shipbuilding and port logistics industries. Under the new sanctions, Chinese entities and individuals are barred from conducting transactions with the affected Hanwha subsidiaries. UK-based Reuters reports that Hanwha's shares fell sharply in Seoul after the announcement, and South Korea's presidential office confirmed it had opened talks with Beijing to clarify the scope of the sanctions. The dispute places Seoul in an uncomfortable position between its biggest trading partner, China, and its key security ally, the United States. Even as Hanwha's case unfolded, Japanese-based financial media outlet Nikkei Asia reported that both Washington and Beijing have now implemented new port entry fees targeting each other's vessels. The US fees, first outlined in April, apply to Chinese-built or Chinese-operated ships entering American ports. Without fleet adjustments, maritime tracking firm Alpha Liner estimated the measures could cost global shipping companies more than $3 billion in additional expenses each year. Analysts told Nikkei that China's state-owned COSCO shipping could shoulder about half of the impact, though it might mitigate the blow by swapping ships with non-Chinese alliance partners. Beijing retaliated with its own port surcharges on American vessels on yesterday, at what one trade consultant described as, quote, the worst possible moment for both sides, end quote, given already strained supply chains. Lars Jensen, CEO of Vespucci Maritime, noted that Beijing's rules apply to vessels controlled by entities with 25% US ownership or more, raising the possibility that even some publicly listed foreign carriers could be caught in the crossfire. The result, Jensen said, could be a, quote, compliance nightmare, end quote, for global operators whose ownership structures are intertwined with American private equity funds. This also greatly increases the cost of shipping to and from China, and combined with tariffs could put greater incentives on international manufacturers to move out of China if they want to sell to the much bigger American market. While shipping and logistics dominate headlines, the more strategically significant story remains China's tightening control over rare earth exports. These minerals, vital for electric vehicles, military hardware, and advanced electronics, have long been a pillar of Beijing's industrial leverage, and not just against the United States. The Wall Street Journal, US-based Wall Street Journal, reported that the new export regime has become a, quote, critical concern, end quote, for the European Union. EU Trade Chief Maros Sefcovic said Tuesday that the restrictions were, quote, unjustified, end quote, and posed serious risks to European industry. UK-based Reuters added that Brussels is now coordinating with Washington and other G7 partners to formulate a joint response. A US-based Bloomberg commentary by Wang Ziyang, a researcher at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, argued that Beijing's policies reflect a strategic shift from being a supplier to a, quote, governor of the rare earth order, end quote. Wang said the controls are intended to prevent military misuse of the minerals and to promote what Beijing calls responsible global governance. However, analysts point out that Beijing has used this dominance to choke off many non-military industries as a tool of leverage. Indeed, US officials see the measures as economic coercion. A senior American official told the UK-based Financial Times yesterday that Beijing's move was a, quote, total pretext, end quote, for a policy long in the making. Quote, they could not pull something so elaborate together in 2 weeks, end quote, the official said, calling the move, quote, disproportionate to the US actions, end quote. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent told the same outlet, the Financial Times, in a separate interview that the rare earth curbs reflected deep economic anxiety in Beijing. Quote, this is a sign of how weak their economy is. They want to pull everybody else down with them. Maybe there's some Leninist business model where hurting your customers is a good idea, but if they slow down the global economy, they'll be hurt the most, end quote. Meanwhile, the tension spilled further into agriculture on Tuesday afternoon when President Trump declared on Truth Social that China's boycott of US soybeans amounted to an, quote, economically hostile act, end quote. He suggested the US might retaliate by halting imports of Chinese cooking oil and other consumer goods. But some analysts have noted that America already buys little such oil from China, and the announcement appeared more symbolic than material, a potential gesture toward the struggling Midwestern farmers rather than a substantive trade lever. Fortunately, the US does have more effective levers to pull at. Despite the confrontations, US Trade Representative Jamison Greer told US media he still believes the two sides could find a resolution, quote, following the meeting, end quote, between Xi Jinping and Donald Trump, tentatively scheduled around the APEC summit. Greer said China had shown, quote, some recognition that they have overstepped, end quote, pointing to slightly softer language in official statements. Yet he cautioned that, quote, it's hard for them to find an off-ramp at this point, end quote. Greer's comments echo broader sentiment in Washington that the conflict has entered a dangerous new phase. Neither side wants to appear weak, yet both understand the global economic costs of escalation. Beijing-based Peking University professor of finance Michael Pettis observed today, quote, this is the impression I got from my meetings last week. There is a sense that Beijing overplayed its hand, perhaps because until China is able to boost domestic demand, something that will be extremely difficult, it is still very vulnerable to a trade contraction, end quote. US stock indices rose through most of Tuesday before sliding sharply after Trump's soybean post. Traders interpreted it as a sign that agricultural trade may now become entangled with maritime and rare earth disputes, widening the conflict's scope once more. Analysts warn that investors should brace for significant volatility in coming weeks, as the likelihood of a meaningful Xi-Trump breakthrough appears remote. So far, Beijing has shown no willingness to roll back its expanded export control regime, and Washington looks set to press ahead with new tariffs and investment restrictions, with Europe also aligning more closely with the US position. The world's three major economic blocs are edging toward a more formalized decoupling. The confrontation has moved beyond tariffs and into a structural contest over technological and supply chain supremacy. Unless both leaders agree to an off-ramp soon, the world's two largest economies risk normalizing confrontation as a mode of economic policy. turning what began as a trade spat into a sustained reordering of global commerce, and setting the stage for a conflict that goes well beyond the scope of economics. And on this theme, this brings us to our next development. Taiwanese President William Lai-Ching has announced a sweeping new initiative to bolster the island's defences against potential aerial attacks, unveiling the so-called T-Dome program during his National Day address in Taipei. The plan marks the most ambitious effort yet to build an integrated air defense system as Taiwan faces growing pressure from Beijing and calls from Washington to enhance its self-defense capabilities. Lai described T-Dome as a, quote, multi-layered defense system, end quote, combining advanced detection and interception technologies to, quote, weave a safety net for Taiwan, end quote, and safeguard its democracy. While he did not directly mention China, his remarks echoed a long-standing theme. Quote, we are determined to maintain peace through strength, end quote. Taiwan's military already operates a mix of domestic and US-supplied air defense systems, including the Tiancong surface-to-air missiles and American-made Patriot batteries. But these have functioned largely as independent units. T-Dome seeks to integrate them into a unified command architecture, similar to Israel's Iron Dome or the US's Golden Dome missile shield proposed under the current US administration. Analysts say the project reflects lessons from the war in Ukraine, where drones, cruise missiles, and ballistic weapons have redefined modern warfare. Drew Thompson, a senior fellow at Singapore's RSIS, called the plan, quote, resourceful and smart, end quote, noting that, quote, integration is essential to respond to a spectrum of aerial threats, end quote. Taiwan's efforts appear to be reinforced by closer collaboration with the US, including reports of a partnership with Northrop Grumman to link American and Taiwanese missile systems. Lai also pledged to, quote, deepen industrial cooperation, end quote, with Washington and push for fairer trade terms under the Trump administration. Beijing condemned the announcement, warning that Taiwan's military buildup, quote, only pushes it towards conflict, end quote. But Lai's message was clear. Faced with China's expanding military drills and assertive posture, Taiwan intends to defend its skies and its political system with greater and more technologically sophisticated military build-up. Okay, that is today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Have a good Wednesday, and I hope to see you for the next episode, which will either be tomorrow or on Friday.